I'm not saying folks in Cleveland are already throwing their Super Bowl parade, but I'm here to rain on it, as Vegas says that the Browns will miss the playoffs.
I mean, all the evidence currently suggests that they're a very good team, but there's also the entire history of the Browns.
That's what I was about to say. The other piece of evidence is the uniforms they wear, the name of their franchise, the stadium they play in, the city the stadium is in. All of that indicates not going to the playoffs, which is horribly unfair.
It is unfair, but that would be pretty entertaining for our purposes, right? If for all of this noise.
Real question, would the Browns be better if their uniforms weren't so ugly?
They should try it.
Rhetorical question. Name's James Harden. Rockets are down 1-0 to the Warriors after dropping game one despite 35 points from Harden. But after the game, he pleaded with officials for more fouls to be called on his three-point attempts, saying, quote, "I just want a fair chance, man. Call the game how it's supposed to be called." Pablo's Harden have a legit gripe here.
Nobody is innocent here, Bo. James Harden knows what he's doing, and as we watch what these calls and non-calls look like, it's pretty clear that the Warriors got away with some stuff too, right? And the Warriors know what they're doing. The Warriors know because of Steph, because of Zaza Pachulia ending Kawhi Leonard's season in the 2017 Western Conference Finals, that getting underneath the shooter is a disruptive and dangerous thing. But then we have this, Bo. And when you have James Harden drop kicking out his legs, the NBA reviewed this and said what? This is, in fact, a non-call. But James Harden is not going to get sympathy from anybody, including myself, for trying that and not getting away with it.
All right, so a lot of those appeared to be fouls, right? Like throughout the course of the game, a lot of them did appear to be fouls. To the point of saying that they got hosed by the refs, I'm not sure. The part that was confusing about this is, and where the Rockets do have a point, they've been calling these things fouls all year long. Now, you can quibble about whether or not it actually is a foul. They've been called, and it sure looked like the refs got together and were like, we're not calling it today, because it wasn't as though this was an inconsistent type of thing that happened. Sometimes they called it, sometimes they didn't. They just weren't calling it at all. And I could understand if the whole season's been officiated one way, this drastic of a change here, yeah, I'd have a measure of a gripe. That being said, the way you put it, hey man, James Harden been out here trying to draw fouls as an offensive technique all year long. Don't nobody feel bad for you when this happens, bruh. Not even when it's Draymond that hits you.
No, you can't be the most clever tax attorney in the league and suddenly start complaining when the IRS is really looking hard at what you're actually doing. But for the referees, I will say for their defense, it is almost impossible to consistently do something like this, which is to say get all of these calls right, because you have a bunch of people, Warriors and Rockets, who are deliberately trying to defraud them, right? So they're not just cops spotting rule breakers. They're not just judges having to deal with challenges and constitutional issues as to what is the rule, what should it be.
Stretch this all the way out.
But they're also theater critics, right? These are high-level athletes throwing their legs, their limbs in all directions, and now they have to deal with that at full speed running up and down the court. That is very hard for a human being to do, and I have sympathy for them, probably more than anybody else involved in this equation.
Dude, the thing is, you keep calling him a tax attorney when he's the IRS, right? The tax attorney is trying to get away with stuff. The IRS is trying to ding you. James Harden is perpetually trying to ding the guys on the other team. And if you have them afraid that they're going to get dinged, then they won't try to do as much to stop you, right? Like that's his whole thing. I'm going to make you afraid to commit a foul. I'm not going to make you afraid of anything physical. I'm not going to make you afraid of what happens if you actually play defense. I'm going to make you afraid that they are going to blow the whistle on you. The truth is, Harden is taking these shots in a place where he can't actually make them. Right? When he gets himself in trouble and gets to be annoying is when he's throwing himself all out of position in order to try to make these shots, and then he comes down. He just missed a lot of these, even if they came into his landing area. And a lot of times they did. What gets me about like the Klay Thompson ones where he's coming forward, even if Harden comes a little bit forward, that doesn't mean you get to come all the way forward, right? It's reasonable that a jump shooter is going to go a little bit forward. The principle of verticality as it applies on defense, that don't really add up to what we got going on here. But what's going to happen in game two? It doesn't matter what any of this was. How are they going to call it in game two? Because it's going to be different officials.
It will be different officials. It will be called differently. I guarantee the officials will call this with more sensitivity. Whether that's satisfactory to the Rockets, who, by the way, apparently have assembled years of research to prove that they are being jobbed regularly, I don't think they'll be satisfying to them. Next name is Giannis Antetokounmpo, because the Greek Freak was held to just 7 of 21 shooting in a Game 1 loss to the Celtics, including 2 of 10, guarded by Al Horford and Aaron Baines. So, Bo, was this about what the Celtics did or what Giannis and the Bucks did not do?
Oh, the Bucks did not look ready for prime time. Like, I don't know how much I can take away from Game 1 because they had a bunch of dudes who did not want to shoot. You saw them. I mean, Early, I felt like the clamps were put on them. Later, I felt like they were getting open shots, and then they did not want them. And the only dude who seemed to not be afraid to shoot is the dude who can't shoot. But the only dude who was able to make threes is the dude who can't shoot. But if he's going to be 2 for 16 from 2, oh, they got a problem.
Yeah, he had 4 made field goals within the arc. 2-pointers, and that is as bad a game as he's had when he's taken at least 20 shots. And the Celtics had a plan. The Celtics said, look, we're going to meet Giannis with 2 big bodies at the top of the key every time. We're not going to let him run to the rim in transition. And when he's on the block, we're going to try and make him go left so that the ball is further away from the rim. These little things that they can do when Al Horford, for all of his age and all of his washedness, clearly is the best defender.
When was he washed? When did you make Al Horford washed?
I thought he was washed before what he did against Joel Embiid.
Wow, why did you make Al Horford washed?
Because for years we were talking about the next generation of guys, and Al Horford, to his credit, proved me wrong in ways that I never expected because he is also clearly the best Giannis stopper in the league.
No, he is the whippersnapper stopper, is what he is. Like, he did this to Embiid last year. He did it to Ben Simmons last year. He did it to Giannis now. There's something to be said for having experience and long arms. But he has an ability to cagily do all these things that stop these guys, and he's strong enough that they can't just muscle him. They can't just overpower him. And I mean, Kyrie was incredible in this game. I don't, 26 and 11, it looked like an easy 26 and 11, but there's still an argument to be made that Al Horford is the best player who was on that team because of what his versatility affords them ability to do.
But the other thing about this game, after the Bucks steamrolled the Pistons, there does seem to be this thing of, I don't know if they were ready for a team this talented this quickly, right?
I mean, this is what we said about Denver after game 1 against San Antonio, right? Like, this is a stage that the guys on the Bucks don't really know anything about. The Celtics have a lot of guys. For them, this is like, okay, we know what we need to do. Even their young guys are like, yeah, but we've been here before. That's why I say on this one, let's look at what happens in game 2. Because game 1, they look shook. Are they going to look shook in game 2? The name is Joel Embiid. Man reportedly has gastroenteritis. It's probable for game 2, probable. In the Sixers game 1 loss, Embiid was held to 16 points and 5 of 18 shooting. Pablo, how much trouble does Philly in here if Kawhi drops another 45 on him?
So Philly contends when Joel Embiid is the best player on the floor. In this game, he was not the best player from Cameroon on the floor because it wasn't just Kawhi and the 45. It was Pascal Siakam from Cameroon who, combined with Kawhi Leonard, outscored the Sixers starting lineup. So when you have Embiid dealing with all of the gaseous stuff going on inside of him, plus the leg stuff, it is hard to be a Sixers fan right now after watching game 1.
It should have been hard when you were shamefully rooting for losing. But now
there was
they're
hope
in the situation that they're here. I mean, look, that knee is a problem. He's heavy. That knee is bad, and he looked like a dude who had a bad knee. If that tendonitis on his knee is going to keep causing him problems, then they got huge problems. They can't win. It's as simple as that. Now, we also said this, or at least I said this last series, and then he came out and put up that monster 31 game against the Nets in Brooklyn. So who knows? Maybe he's going to be in a position where he's able to power through it. But look, Kawhi gave it to everybody. Jimmy Butler guarding him. Kawhi was 4 for 5 from the floor. Tobias Harris, 5 for 5 from the floor. James Ennis the third, 2 for 2 from the floor. Who? Furkan. Never heard of him. But he got a bucket from Kawhi, too. The only guy that came close was Ben Simmons. 3 from 8 from the floor and 0 for 3 from 3. That's the closest anybody got to stopping Kawhi Leonard. And when Kendrick Perkins was like, he looked like Michael Jordan. He didn't look as good as Michael Jordan, but he's playing a very similar type of game to Michael Jordan.
There's a plausible comparison, and that is mind-blowing to me because Kawhi Leonard, and Siakam too, by the way, these are triumphs in player development. Kawhi Leonard could not shoot, could not take people off the bounce, could not really be used in the pick and roll, could not do the things that he is doing now in ways that we really haven't seen from a guy with this kind of a background, a guy who couldn't do it and now is doing it as well as anybody in the league. But I ask you this, for the Sixers, man, Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid, yeah, they can double up on Kawhi Leonard, they can throw bodies at him, whatever you need to do, right? But can they stop him? Can they actually stop a guy who looks as good as he did in game 1?
This I'll say, that's what Jimmy Butler's for, right? Like, if there was something that you got out of bringing in Jimmy Butler in particular, is that you were getting a two-way player. What's happening, though, is this is the rare occasion where the other dude is stronger than Jimmy. That's the game flip on that. By the way, I know why Siakam got so good. Doesn't he look like he about to elbow you all the time? I'd be scared as hell of guarding him. Like, oh, whoa, 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 wow, he just scored again?
Very elbow.
Coming up next, do the Panthers have a quarterback controversy?
Away because he had 35 and may just be the best player in the universe, so probably should have mentioned him.
Way to go, big dog.
You did it. First quote. Nothing to do with Cam. This is nothing to do with Cam Newton. Cam Newton is our starting quarterback and franchise quarterback, said Panthers GM Marty Herney after using a third rounder to draft West Virginia quarterback Will Grier. So, Bo, should Cam feel threatened by this?
No, he should not feel threatened by this. He should worry about what's going on with his shoulder. That's the big thing here. But the truth is, the Panthers needed a quarterback, right? They needed a backup quarterback. It would make sense to get a young one. And so, yeah, drafting Will Grier. Okay, no reason for Cam to be threatened. But I'm telling you right now, I've been close enough to Charlotte and seen how things go in this matter. 2 bad games, and it's going to be a bunch of people calling for Will Grier. There used to be a Derek Anderson hive. It's going to transition smoothly into being the Will Grier hive, and I swear I'm not making this up.
Cam Newton on the merits is clearly a galaxy better than Will Grier, but the guy hasn't thrown a football since this second surgery in 3 years on that shoulder, and the vulnerability of just getting a backup, I imagine, has to be somewhat frustrating because you can point to Jimmy Garoppolo behind Tom Brady or Mason Rudolph behind Ben Roethlisberger. And yes, those guys are still entrenched as starters, but I don't think those quarterbacks enjoyed the experience of being, followed around by the next young thing.
Yeah, except this is different, though, because they did not draft this guy to take his job. I feel like we got enough evidence now to indicate that Bill Belichick was thinking that one day Jimmy Garoppolo was going to take Tom Brady's job, right? I don't think that's what's going on here, and I believe Herney when he says this. It's also worth noting that Marty Herney is the general manager who drafted Cam Newton, even though he left for a little while when Gettleman had that job. There's a different view, I think, that he's got there, but Herney also understands, this is a point Darren Gant made on Pro Football Talk, you have to come out here and say this. You have to say this loudly and clearly because the backup quarterback is about to become one of the most popular people in Charlotte in a way that goes beyond your typical sporting acts.
He's a local kid, right? That's part of this too?
That too.
The demographics.
Yeah, cool. Got it. Quote, there's no patience and there's no room for civil discourse in our society, which I find sad. Said Giants GM Dave Gettleman to Peter King. Pablo, is he right about the lack of civil discourse?
This is something that is true. Broadly speaking, yes, we should be a more polite, open-minded society, but this is also, in specific, a thing you just say when you're getting dunked on a lot, right? This is just a guy who does not like the criticism, despite his argument being, trust me, I know what I'm doing. No, you don't need to see any evidence as to actually why that is.
My man says there's no patience, he just started working in the NFL. Tell me when this era was where people just sat around waiting all the time for NFL teams. Nah, take your time, big dog. We will be ready when you are. That's never been the way that it has worked. But let's go to this, though. Gettleman, he the only person that would have taken Daniel Jones number 6. And since he's the only person that would have done it, he keeps finding the need to explain why he did it. And here's what he's got here, why he didn't just wait till 17 when they had another pick.
I can say this to you guys right now. When we got in here Friday night, the question was posed, why didn't you wait until 17? Well, I know for a fact there were 2 teams that would have taken him in front of 17. I know that for a fact.
Who the hell were they?
Reporting notably from pretty much entirely around the NFL has said that they don't know who he's talking about, right? Because Washington, Dwayne Haskins, Broncos know. So, who he's talking about is a mystery, but I would also say this, right? He is a guy who kind of sounds like a scammer. I love that he is out here saying things that no other GM will say, but he sounds like a scammer. Is he going to be here in 3 years? He keeps on talking about 3 years as the time horizon for this pick.
Yeah, but to be fair, that's by the time we'd actually know what it was, right? Maybe in 3 years, this will be it. The thing is, and this is where I really think he played this badly, it doesn't matter where you took Jones. So long as you took him in the first round, all that's going to matter is whether he pans out or not. You don't have to defend why you took him at 6. Why'd you take him at 6? Because we think he's that damn good. That's the easy answer for you to give. Instead, well, I heard. No, man, if he's as good as you say, just say that.
Last quote. Our comfort with Joe enabled us to pass on a quarterback. I truly think we've got a guy coming into his prime, said Broncos president John Elway to NBC's Peter King about 34-year-old Joe Flacco after the Broncos traded up in the second round to draft Drew Lock. Does this any of this make sense to you?
Prime of what? He's 34. He hasn't been good since 2012, and even then he was good for a month. What are you talking about?
Look, he took Drew Lock, and it's obvious what John Elway's thinking when he takes Drew Lock, because it looks a lot like what he did when it came down to Paxton Lynch, which is what former players do all the time when they become executives, you know? That guy reminds me a lot of myself. And so he went and took the guy that reminds him a lot of himself. Guess who else probably reminds him a lot of himself? Joe Flacco. And maybe Elway's looking at it that way. Well, you know, when I was 34, they thought I was done. And I was just coming. You weren't coming into your prime. Terrell Davis was.
I think Joe Flacco, maybe it's his feelings that are being protected because he complained about how if you're going to take a quarterback at 10, just don't treat him like a starting quarterback, basically. He wants to be the starter. Maybe John Elway's lying to protect him. But in John Elway and Joe Flacco, don't you have two quarterbacks who are basically using a Super Bowl, for Flacco was 2012, for Elway was 2015, to mask the fact that they don't really know what they're talking about when it comes to quarterback evaluation?
John Elway is masking all of this, not in a Super Bowl, but in the two other Super Bowls, and the fact that he is John Elway. Look, he should not have that job.
No!
He has been demonstrably bad at that job since that Super Bowl, but they got a power vacuum there in Denver, and nobody has more power. John Elway's out here sending out political correspondence on team letterhead. Can't nobody tell him nothing. Coming up next, how come the Spurs didn't foul? They ain't want to win the game? I would have won the game. All right, it's official. He's just trolling us. This is Russell Wilson on the Instagram, partying like it's 1999 with that coat on.
There are multiple photos. There was a photo shoot, and basically, if Russell Wilson is telling us that he's going to end up like he's dressing like a pre-dress code NBA player.
Wow, G-Thang. It's a double entendre that he's working with there. Now he's just messing with us. He knows what he's doing here.
He hired a stylist, and this is the style he wants us to know about, which is to say...
Does that coat come in triple extra large?
The longest t-shirts you could find. Today's number, 28 seconds. That's how much time was left in Game 7 of Spurs Nuggets with the Spurs down by 4. Let's watch how this unfolded, Bo. Because it was inexplicable.
Huge possession.
They need the ball back.
There's Greg Popovich.
They need the ball back.
Foul. Everybody.
They're saying the foul.
Someone. Anyone.
Marcus Aldridge's been in the league for 13 years. Just so you know.
Underrated part of this, by the way. Why is Jamal Murray even shooting a 3?
Why not?
Why not? I guess why not? Because the other team had no idea what was happening. But, Bo, it was a noisy arena. Is that how LaMarcus Aldridge gets left off the hook?
Hell no, he don't get off the hook. Can he count? Like, if he can count, I feel like it's pretty obvious what it is that you need to do. So it's really loud in there. Other people seem to be able to hear each other okay. The one person that couldn't hear was LaMarcus Aldridge. Word.
But the other players on the team, seemingly, some of them seem to know, or at least had the gestures of knowing, you fouled. Why didn't they foul?
Because they're not guarding that dude. Like, if they run off that guy, all the ball is going to do is go to somebody else that you can't foul. They were reasonably thinking at some point LaMarcus Aldridge was going to remember that he was in a basketball game and was going to foul.
Well, watch Patty Mills here, because Patty Mills, it looks like he's going to, nope, not a foul. He's just going to run around the guy with the ball. Jokic is waiting to get fouled.
He had the best chance there to foul because he was lucky that they ran Murray around over to where the ball was. But no, that is indefensible. There's nothing that you can say that makes that okay.
This is how the best coach in NBA history by some lights ends up ending his season, like that.
In closing, I'm showing you this in case you know one of the competitors and you didn't believe it when he told you what happened. Here's our man, Matt Boland, the Tim Dwight of Houston.
Yeah.
You remember Tim Dwight?
I do.
No, he wasn't. That's the whole point. Wow. Yo, man, that is the fastest all-weather 100-meter time ever. It was wind-aided, so we're going to have to hate on him just a little bit.
But everybody had the wind, and only he looked like that.
Yes, that is it.
And Bo, I have called him gritty and, a lunch pail guy and all of that, and people were very mad at me. Matt Bowling, in his defense, got the joke with my sarcasm to be a little more pronounced. But he gets it. He knows why he's interesting. He knows why he's fascinating. Look at him. What an athlete.
He's just faster than everybody. Like objectively speaking, just this is ridiculous speed that we are talking about here. Man, I tell you this too. If he make it to the Olympics, that Wheaties box waiting on him. That'd be the greatest thing to ever happen to the Summer Olympics, right? Finally, they get them somebody they can push that ain't no swimmer, right? Oh, man, they can't wait for that. Remember, we used to have those arguments, who's a better athlete, Michael Phelps or Usain Bolt? And we kept trying to explain Usain Bolt because more people run and people swimming is so much harder than everything else. Ain't nobody going to be making that point if this dude come out there and win the 100. They'll be like, this is the truest test of athleticism that there's ever been.
And there must be theories, conspiracy theories emerging, explaining why this guy is so good, because he's just destroying everybody straight up. In closing, I wouldn't recommend popping your shirt off before walking into a job interview. But here's what happened when famously jacked wideout DK Metcalf met his future employer at the NFL Combine.
Wow, man. I would take my shirt off, too. What's up, man? How you doing? You all right? You don't have to listen to him, man.
Yo.
Yeah!
Pete Carroll, 67 years young.
How do you, I mean, does that look like youth to you?
That looks like a guy who loves nothing more than the opportunity to pop his shirt off. And speaking of conspiracy theories, by the way, like the story here, Bo, is that a scout told DK Metcalf, a Seahawks scout, told him, you might want to go do this. You know, you're the famously jacked guy. And he walked in and did it. And Pete Carroll was surprised to find out that he had walked in with his shirt off. I believe that Pete Carroll may have tipped off that scout to take off his shirt so that Pete Carroll could be on television taking off his shirt. I'm just saying, might be a little bit of an inside job.
You took all the time to make that point.
Very inside.
Wrap it up.
Highly questionable is coming up next.
The NBA playoffs continue Thursday on ESPN. Conference semifinals presented by Wells Fargo.
Ay, Dios mío. What happened? No, just struggling.
Yeah?
Just struggling. I had a bad night of sleep.